Ray. Do it again.
Get back to it.
All right, Ray, thank you. The call's all yours.
All right. First of all, can we get a round of applause for Debbie's haircut, please? Debbie, you look fantastic. Thanks for hosting us today. All right, guys, today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to do this podcast style with our special guest today. So the first 30 minutes of the meeting is going to be organic, unscripted, all off one question podcast. Then we're going to go into breakout rooms and talk about a couple different things. So if you are with us right now, alive with a heartbeat, can I get a 2-word check-in in the chat? I'm excited. This sucks. Need coffee, need tequila, whatever it is, drop it in the chat. Let's get going. All right, awesome. I love it. Guys, I'd like to introduce Charles Boyette. Charles, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to a super fun chat.
I love it. Well, let's get started. Charles, why real estate?
Well, real estate was my backup plan. You know, I had things all planned out at the early age of 16. You know, I was 100% positive I was going to either be an incredible NFL prospect or even a second baseman for the Cubs. And about 16, I realized that I stopped growing at the same rate everybody else has stopped growing. And so I realized by the time high school was done that maybe my professional athlete aspirations had come to a conclusion. Honestly, man, real estate's in my DNA. My entire family's in it. My mother's in it. My father, everybody. And I watched my mom while I was in high school, as she was a single mother. I watched her basically bootstrap her business and really create something quite spectacular of herself. And so my mother was my inspiration for why I ultimately got into the real estate game, and really haven't looked back since I was 18 when I first got in.
I love it. Charles, tell us about your first deal.
Oh, my first deal was about 3 weeks into my very first time I was at a company called Watson Realty in Jacksonville, Florida, back when they had floor duty. And I was nervous as I could be. I sat at the front desk and I was hoping just please nobody call today. And they called, and literally I was sitting at the desk for about 20 minutes when the first call came in, and I was like a deer in headlights. I had no idea what was going on, but somehow I was able to sweet talk them into going and looking at properties at me. So thank goodness it was a smooth deal, but the first one kind of fell out of the sky and into my lap. And honestly, once that first deal closed, man, it had me. I was hooked. I was ready to roll.
Did you have a sales background?
Yes, I had an extensive, oh yeah, man. I had an extensive background at 18 years old. I had sold Beanie Babies. I had sold tennis shoes in the mall. I had done a lot of sales, but real estate was my first official gig. I went straight from Winn-Dixie to an illustrious career selling Beanie Babies, Princess Dies. I could tell you all about them, and then straight into real estate.
What was unexpected at your first brokerage that you landed at?
Ooh,
as
unexpected.
You were there. Yeah. What was unexpected?
Well, I'll tell you, the unexpected thing was that my blonde streaks and earring was not acceptable, right? I keep in mind, guys, I was 18 years old.
Oh, that was the Vanilla Ice starter kit, right?
Oh, you know it. I had frosted tips and everything, guys. It was not a good look if I'm looking back on things. But you know what? There wasn't a ton, honestly, that was unexpected because, again, I had listened to my mom in the car. I had listened to my dad. He's in commercial. She's in residential. I felt like I could talk the talk before I actually got into my first transaction just because I'd been exposed to it.
Right. So knowing what you know now, however many years later, that was your first brokerage. That was your first stop. Would you have made a different choice?
You know, back then, man, and by the way, it was 26 years ago. It was my very first, when I first got in this business. And back then, the landscape was completely different. So if the options that were available today were available then, I probably would have made a different decision, honestly. But the reality was, at the time, the real estate industry has been a very traditional, a lot of different signs, but a lot of similarities in brokerages. A lot of companies operate the same. And the company I went with back then, they were a local legacy company. They were well known, had nice market share, and they were known for their education. Well, and what I've learned through the years is what they were known for was talking about their education, like most brokerages. But come to find out, it's very similar at most brokerages. You know, if the options that were available today were available back then, yeah, I would have. That was before the whole hybrids and the downlines and all that stuff. It was just traditional business as usual back then. So tough question to answer. because what's available today wasn't available back then.
Yeah, well, it's a loaded question on purpose. I want to talk
Sure.
about your brokerage journey, right? Because
Sure.
in this business, we all don't know what we don't know in a lot of ways, right? So when you get into real estate, you're pushed out of the airplane without a parachute. Good luck. We just taught you how to not get sued and how to make sure you meet compliance to maintain your license. That's about it. They don't tell you you're a startup founder, you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner. You have to be the lead gen dude, the marketing guy, take out the trash and all that kind of good stuff. So over 26 years, that's a big investment of time. That's your life, right? So
It is.
I want to talk about that journey over 26 years and what that brokerage journey looked like and what just one thing you took away from each one as you left the brokerages. Cause I assume like you're not at the same brokerage, right?
No, I think I've total. I think I'm at my fourth brand in 26 years.
Okay. So let's, we talked about where you started. What happened next?
Well, I stayed there for a while. So that was, I don't even know what year, 98, 97, 98. And so I graduated in 97. So I was in business by 98. And I was there until 2010 or 11. And I made it was a great brand. It really was. I enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot. I learned the ropes. Was able to string together a little over 8 million in my first year. And I just had some great people around me advising me. And that was that first place because I was so young. I had a lot of people start asking me, how do you do this? How'd you do that? And I didn't really know what the answer was because my only real answer was I worked my butt off. I mean, while don't let the blonde streaks and the earring fool you, I was not the party guy. I was locked in and trying to crush it. I had aspirations, and so I was grinding. And that brokerage, what it really taught me was less about the business. My big takeaway, anyways, was less about the business and that I had an actual desire to help other agents develop, because that's what I took away. Because when I left there for the next stop, it was instantly into a leadership position. Before I left, I did like a lot of us agents do. We find some success and we think, you know what, I'm going to be a real estate coach. Well, I hadn't quite developed the chops that I needed to be an actual coach. And also, I found that the people that I really wanted to help, Ray, they couldn't afford me. And I wasn't expensive. I really wanted to see the people elevate that initial period. And they couldn't afford me, even though I was a fairly cheap coach. And so that led me to a journey of seeking a leadership opportunity. And that's ultimately what led me to the next brokerage. So what I
Let's talk
learned
about
at the
that.
what I learned at the first stop was I had a real desire to help other people. That was my genuine passion in the industry. It wasn't about opening lock boxes. Yeah, so the next stop was straight into my very first leadership opportunity. I had my mentor to this day, a gentleman named Pete Dalton, owns a very, very, very successful Coldwell Banker franchise down in Jacksonville, Florida, and he had been trying to recruit me for a few years, and I wasn't that more production at that time. I was already not what my number one focus was, and he came to me one day and said, "Charles, I got a different idea for you. How about I groom you to take over my company?" I was like, what? What? That's interesting. Okay, let's talk about that. And so he gave me straight into leadership. I was given my first leadership position was director of market development for one of the top 10 Coldwell Banker franchises in the country. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was in that role. I liked the title. It sounded cool, Director of Market Development, right? But basically what it meant was I helped go in, identify new markets, open offices, hire new agents. And it was basically just a touch above an office manager position. And that led into ultimately a vice presidency role.
So two things. One, were you ready for that role when you assumed it? And two, what is something that you feel would have helped you become ready for that role?
No, guys, I do not want to lie to you. I was absolutely not ready for that role. I was grateful, and to this day, I'm incredibly grateful that a great leader in this industry, Pete Dalton, saw something in me and wanted to give me that opportunity to kind of develop that skill set. And I'll be honest with you, at that point in my life, I don't know other than other maybe lower level leadership positions, maybe a assistant sales manager or office manager, something like that could have prepared me for that, because I went straight into from sales into hey, you want to help elevate agents? I'm going to put you right in the in the frying pan. I mean, so we went straight in. So I don't really know because of how short my journey was. I don't know what else I could have done other than a different leadership position to prepare me for that. But I'll tell you, I don't at that age, I'm a big fan of showing credit where credit is due. And I don't think that if I hadn't had an incredible mentor, I don't know that I could have come out of that smelling like roses. But he was there with me every step of the way. And so it was a blessing. And every time I go to Jacksonville, I still try to buy the guy a beer. Cause I mean, he's played a huge role in the trajectory of my career.
I love that. Let's take a pause real quick. Hey guys, who here has questioned whether they're ready to do something or not in their career? Anybody? Can I see a show of hands? All right. So Charles, what is one thing that you feel would have helped you become more ready to take a leap of faith on something like this?
We're so eager in this industry. I think in life, not even this industry. I think we're so eager to find that instant gratification that sometimes we seek out and we make moves sometimes before we're completely ready. I think the only thing that could have helped me be more ready was simply more time. Being around the conversations that were being had by high level people. Because doing a good chunk of business, I found myself surrounded by other high producing agents. And so I had a lot of conversations about high level production, but my circle wasn't talking about high level operations. They weren't talking about high level business development. And so I think the thing that could have prepared me more is to found a not a better circle by any means, because I love all the people I came up with, but a more pointed circle that we're talking about different types of conversations, not just selling houses, which this whole business is based on production. So those are vital conversations. But as you shift into leadership and operations and company development, it's a slightly different conversation, still built on the foundation of production. But I think probably if I had to do it over again, I don't know that I'd play it much differently. I'm always going to be a guy that jumps in 2 feet first and just we're going to get it done. We're going to figure out a way. That's how I'm wired. But I guess if I had to do it over and I was going to try to do it better, faster, bigger, I would have probably put myself in the right rooms and the right conversations and started developing myself before I was thrown into the pressure cooker.
I love it. Sorry, guys. We got a special guest real quick that has to interrupt who's homesick from school. Can you give everybody a wave at
Aw.
least? Say hello.
Hey,
Okay, we'll take care of that in a minute. Go grab my chair, okay?
I'm a big fan of daddy duty status, man.
Yeah,
I'm a
100%.
full-time daddy myself. I love it.
100%. Okay, so you started at this local brokerage with a great reputation and footprint, established hyper-local brand. You went to a leadership position at, a franchise-based brokerage. And now today, there's all these different hybrid models, cloud models, franchise-based, right? Like, let's talk about that franchise model, how it operated, and then I want to get into your next step.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, as operation, I mean, at its base level, the traditional franchise model, whether it be a Coldwell, whether it be a Century 21, Keller Williams to a degree, most of this industry is built on a similar foundation. But this company was very progressive in their approach to the relationship, and I think the Coldwell Banker, even though there was a step in between that and where I'm at now, I really think that brokerage was kind of, I don't know, I want to call it like maybe my college, my graduation school, everything on how I operate today, because they were they were very progressive in their relationship with the agent. They really gave a lot to their agent, and I think that played a big role in the development of what my goal has been since I got into leadership, which is help agents have longevity in this business. That model operated different than most. They gave a lot. They weren't a cheap brokerage, right? There was no cap, right? I think the max you could get to was like an 85 or 90% split. And there was no cap, but they gave their agents a tremendous amount of benefits. They had an entire marketing center, this and that. They had photography service, which is kind of not a lot of brokerages provide that stuff. And they were built differently, but they were still a traditional mindset in that agents could spend a small fortune to be there. And while that brokerage was a great brokerage, it didn't quite perfectly align with my values. My values were trying to help agents keep money in their pocket. I wanted to figure out how we could elevate agents without sticking the ever-present hand in their pocket. And so while that was a great brokerage, it wasn't quite, it's kind of like Goldilocks, right? It's this bed or this eating the porridge, almost, I like it's not quite right. Right. And I had to find a couple other stops before I found the spot that really aligned with who I am and what I see out of this business. But the Coldwell Banker, the franchise model, it's a great model. There's too much time in this industry right now. We see the downline model, we see the traditional brokerage, and they seem to be fighting in all the Facebook, mastermind groups and all that. Who's better and your brand's horrible and this and that. And I think there's a place for all of it, right? Some people are going to operate a little differently. Some people need different benefits and services. And so that brokerage, as great as it wasn't quite where I knew I was going to hang my shingle for the rest of my career. I know that was kind of a ramble right there, and I don't know if I even answer your question, but it was a traditional model and one that didn't quite speak to my core.
Well, I think it's interesting. And I think, with this little bit I know about your journey so far, that you're in a very unique position, right? Because typically in an organizational structure, you have CEO, CFO, and then COO. And it's the chief operations officer, which is a role that you've embraced and assumed, operations, that has to talk to both the financial aspect of the business as well as the visionary aspect of the business, right? And typically the CEO is the visionary, the CFO is the guy like holding all the money and trying to make sure to keep all the cash in the business as possible. But so much of this is broken in the real estate industry.
Correct.
With the way the models are built, with the people that are leading, with the regulations and compliance initiatives that are there to govern the industry, which sometimes do more harm than good, depending upon which organization we're talking about.
Certainly.
So I think it's interesting, this role that you've adopted. So thinking about that, thinking about looking towards, hey, I want to be agent centric. How does operations play into that for you?
Well, operations for me is, as it pertains to real estate, is there's this balance that we have to strike in this industry. We're at a point in this industry where agents just aren't willing to work for any less, and they shouldn't, right? They're worth their value, and they want their value. But simultaneously, we're at this place in the brokerage model where brokerages just can't give any more, right? They have hard costs, they have fixed costs, and it's not always that they just want to gouge their agents. Sometimes they have bills to pay, right? We love going to the people like going to their offices, and well, 70% of in most brick and mortars hard costs come from their offices and their staff. So that money's got to come from somewhere. So we're at this really weird impasse. And so part of the operations model for me, or the mindset for that, is trying to strike that balance. How can a brokerage be wildly profitable, because that's how I'm paid, right? And how can the agent feel like they're completely taken care of and they have money in their pocket to do everything? So the operation, a COO position at most brokerage, at most businesses outside of real estate, is really just about the fundamentals of building business. As it pertains to the real estate industry, I've always seen it as kind of like that bridge between production and the executive suite, right? Because that's a really tough balance to strike. How can I make the agents feel loved? Because what comes out of my COO mindset rolls down to state brokers, rolls down to regional brokers, rolls down to, admin staff, and then rolls down to agents. So it is a hyper connected position. For me, COO is really fundamentally building the business, but is that bridge between the agent and the actual company. And so I think it's a vital role and a vital position to be in, because you're kind of like got your finger on the pulse of what's going on with the agents. You have to.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because then your next stop, I happen to know the next stop, right, was extremely disruptive to this industry. So can we get into that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right.
So from there, I spent a good time with this Coldwell Banker brand, and like I said, I got nothing but respect for the Blue. A lot of good people there, and my next stop was EXP, and EXP came out of the woodwork in 2009. They started recruiting me, and I think every other person that had a pulse and a license, right? And back then I was ignorant like everybody else, and I was like, "What is this, Amway?" What is this? It was crazy. It was weird because it was different. It was disruptive. And people, and I will admit it, my mind wasn't there yet. I wasn't ready to accept that there was a shift coming to this industry, like most people. And so I passed on it. I passed on it. And then I ended up meeting somebody while with Coldwell Banker. I was out in Phoenix trying to sniff out a new lending relationship for the brand. And I ran into a lady that ultimately became my business partner at EXP. Hell, I'll give her props on this call. Her name's Sheila Faison. She's still over at EXP, an incredible woman, and runs an incredible company, incredible business. I met her and she kind of said, "Hey, Charles, we courted each other for a couple months." And then she was like, "Hey, I'd like you to come partner with me in my business." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not really in production anymore. I've seen the EXP model at this point. It had grown on me. I saw the value for it as an agent. And I was like, I'm just not in production. I think it's not for me." And she said, "No, no, no. I want you to come partner with me in my business." And I'm like, "All right, that sounded different that time, right? What's that really mean?" And so she gave me an opportunity to come over and help her develop. When I met her, she had about 8,000 agents with her in her downline model, which is freaking amazing, right? And she gave me the opportunity to sit at the captain's chair, and I actually became the COO of her organization and her business partner. And what I did was really fun. I brought some of my old school, franchise model mindset, COO stuff, and brought it to a downline model and fused that together. And we went from about 8,200 to just short of 15,000 agents in about 15 months, 18 months. And so what I saw with the downline model was one thing. And then we can, we'll take EXP off the branding. Let's just call it the downline model right now. What I saw with the downline model was first and foremost, too many people that didn't understand it and too many people that had negative vibes with it because of the recruiting aspect. Right. Well, I can see how some people can maybe be extreme with it. They're blowing people up. It's not fun. We don't like those calls. But I came with a different mindset, regardless whether it was sales manager, director of business development, or executive vice president. No matter what was on my name tag at a different brokerage, the number one job was still to grow the company, grow the office. So everything I did had an element of agent attraction to it. Right. So I brought that mindset to the downline model, and it just clicked in my mind because what led me, if we take it all the way back to Coldwell Banker, what led me to leadership was trying to find a brokerage that would bankroll me to elevate their agents. Because remember, I didn't cut it as a coach because the people couldn't afford me. Not that I was expensive. The people I wanted to help didn't have an extra 500 a month. So that's what led me to leadership. So when we fast forward all these years and you put me in that downline model, the mindset never shifted for me. I simply found a brokerage to bankroll me for helping an agent, for helping me roll a message downhill. And if that had to come in the form of a downline, how's that much different than coming from the form of a healthy salary? Right. So the mindset really wasn't that different for me. So what I was experiencing at EXP was a really great model. And I have nothing negative to say about that model. So if there's any people that are with EXP in the crowd, you're with a great brokerage. Okay. But what I found over time, there was a couple discrepancies that didn't, again, I have a problem staying at places that don't align with my core values. Right. And as great as a company as they are, there was a couple issues that I saw that I didn't really align with. I didn't like the fact that in a real estate business that I had my number one value proposition seemed to be the idea of selling what could happen if you built a downline, right? And somebody said this to me one time, and I wasn't ever able to get it out of my head. They said, take the brand off the sign again. Let's just talk the downline model. If you take away revenue sharing, you take away stock from these downline models, what's left that makes them much different from a brick and mortar industry, a brick and mortar company? And that stuck with me. And I was like, so I am selling rev share. That's what's happening. But I'll tell you the positive things that I took away from EXP in that downline environment was we've got to stop thinking about the fact that downline versus traditional model is bad. They're both trying to accomplish the same thing. They're both trying to hopefully elevate the agent. But then we have that part we got to figure out. How can we elevate the agent without sticking our hand in their pocket? That's the tough part. And so while I loved my time at EXP and I left on great terms, I have no ill will and I got a lot of friends. Heck, my mother is still with EXP. Okay. So there, I said it. My mom's still at EXP. I got to work on that. All right. But I think it's a great model with a great upside. But there was a couple things, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about, that didn't quite align with who I was. They still wasn't able to quite figure out how to get the hand out of the agent's pocket. And that's my number one driving factor.
So Charles, I want to pause you right there because what I heard from you, we're going to do some active listening right now.
Okay.
Is you just described a vehicle, right? Like you were looking for a vehicle. It stemmed from your first brokerage and then taking this leadership position over to Coldwell Banker, from Coldwell Banker, moving over to EXP, understanding that, hey, this vehicle is faster. It gives me more um,
Way more nimble.
agility, right? To move more latitude, longitude with what you want to do. And that vehicle for you has evolved to keep getting better, to keep giving and providing for the agents and focus on something agent centric. So with that, I want to understand that, like, with all of us, whether you're an agent, a lender, an insurance broker, a small bakery owner in the community, like, we all want some type of vehicle towards either freedom, financial security, more money, more freedom with the family and kids, whatever it may be. So that's what I'm hearing for you. Like, is that right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, Ray, it's 100% right. And sometimes I laugh at myself. Actually, I laugh at myself a lot, and I'd say I sound like an after school special sometimes because I genuinely have this desire to do right by people, which is a whole nother talk we can do. I had some trauma happen to me when I was like 23, 24. I was in a horrible boat wreck. I almost lost my leg. Had to sell a house. Had to move back home with my mom. During this whole like 3 year traumatic period, I had some people in my life step up, and this was before I got into leadership. And this is what was a core reason why I wanted to help people. I had some people selflessly give their time and energy and emotion, not money, but I had people give me their belief in me. And that changed me. That absolutely changed me. And most of my career has been trying to figure out how to pay that forward. There's certain people in my life that had they not been there at a certain time in my life, I can't guarantee the path I would have had to travel. So that vehicle that have been seeking is not necessarily my vehicle. There's a Zig Ziglar quote that I murder all the time, so I paraphrase it. I live a business practice based around the idea that if I help enough people get what they want in this life, I'm going to get what I want. That's my vehicle. That's my vehicle that I've been seeking. So in my alignment with brand, I really don't care if it's a downline, if it's a traditional, what it is. I needed that brand to also have that same desire to ride shotgun with me in that vehicle. That's what I've been trying to seek.
All right, so let's talk about your next stop, because this is shotgun, right? This is the vehicle you're in right now.
Correct.
When and how and why did you decide to move on from EXP?
So again, I did not leave EXP because I was disgruntled. I did not leave EXP because I had an issue with anybody there. It was business as usual, and I thought it was as good as it was going to get. I mean, real. I thought EXP was the stop, right? And you know how the EXP downline model works. Somebody usually says, "Hey, man, you need to take a look at this," right? And a guy that I really respected that was with me at EXP for a while, his name is Jay Nago. He's the managing broker for our current brokerage out in California. A lot of respect for this guy. He called me up one day and said, "Hey, man, I know you're happy." And I'm like, "Dude, I've heard this spiel before. Just give it to me. Let me guess. You need me to punch holes in something, right?" And he laughed. He said, "Yeah, all right, you got me. I want you to look at something." And he sent me a website, and that's it. That's all he did. He sent me a website and said, "Take a look at this." What I saw on that website blew my mind because what I saw was the way I interpreted it, a brand that was trying to create solutions and answers to the questions I've been asking for 26 years. And I saw a brand that seemed to have the same mindset that they wanted to treat their agents as business partners rather than a revenue stream and help get one thing I'm chasing is help get this dang hand out of all of our pockets. Here's your license and here's a never ending invoice. Guys, that drives me nuts. And so what I saw when I saw this brand for the first time was a company that for the first time seemed at surface value to fully align with my values. And it was no longer my car. They had a front row seat for me to get in their vehicle. And that was very powerful because I saw a company that it hit on all the notes for me. And so ultimately that conversation, when I saw this laundry list, it was a lot. I'm not going to lie. At first, it was amazing. And instantly right off, I was kind of put off. I'm like, yeah, so this is our dream brokerage, right? How's this happening? How's this sustainable? How's this going to make any financial sense? And he broke it down for me in about 3 seconds. I'm like, all right, giddy up, let's do this. And I haven't looked back. So he put me on a call with the owners of the company. And I guess they looked into my background a little bit. And so they offered me a pretty sweet setup. I am now the managing broker for the state of North Carolina for EPIQUE Realty. And I also have the distinct privilege of serving in multiple leadership roles. I'm on the board. I serve on the founders board and the executive boards. And it's really exciting because not only did this brand align with my values, they basically said, hey, why don't you help us build this into the brokerage you and all these agents have always been looking for? Now we're talking, guys. Now I feel like that vehicle is no longer on the road. It's in the parking lot at the final destination because I have found a place that truly speaks to my core. So that's it. So I am with EPIQUE Realty, and I made the shift back. I signed my ICA and my contracts back in April, and we had it was a fun couple roads. You know, we always hear nobody likes being on an island all by themselves, right? Imagine being agent number one in a state. You want to talk about an island? Ooh, that was crazy. But we actually opened the state up the end. We technically got licensed the end of June, and man, we haven't looked back. It's been a wild ride and exciting.
So let's talk about, we talked about this journey, right? Where you started, where you went to, adopted this leadership role, also really embraced that those values as a leader, pushing agent centric, going to EXP, a very disruptive cloud-based model.
Incredibly.
And now you're at EPIQUE, who seems to be, again, very disruptive with what they're doing.
Right.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Like, what's the elevator pitch on EPIQUE?
Well, I mean, the elevator pitch is, what's really fun is I haven't had to give the elevator pitch too many times. I'm like, dude, just check out this website, right? And everybody's like, all right, let's go, let's do this. So I haven't even had to develop the elevator pitch. But if I was going to sum it up in a nutshell, I kind of said the phrase a little earlier. I've kind of coined and used it quite a bit. I found a brokerage that actually is treating us as business partners, not a revenue stream. So many of the benefits and services that they offer us and the agents are the things. They're not the shiny objects. They're not the, here's this cool piece of something that, yeah, looks cool, but you're not really going to use it. The benefits and services that they offer their agents are the things that agents are bringing in real cash out of their pocket every single day to facilitate their transactions. Well, I know this isn't always the case in a lot of brokerages, but I'm a non-competing broker. I do not participate in a production. Caveat, I might do 3 or 4 transactions a year just to keep my friends and family happy and keep fresh on the game. But so most of the stuff that they offer didn't really benefit my pocket directly. What I saw was, oh my gosh, all the agents that I could introduce this idea to, it's going to affect their pocket wildly. The elevator pitch is just that, hey, this is the brokerage we've all been looking for. We've all been happy at our brokerages. In fact, I was happy where I was at, but sometimes I would imagine in most of our careers, at some point, no matter how happy we've been able to have this thing in the back of our head that says, maybe there's still a better way to do this. And it's been there for all of us. Maybe not everybody, but I know it was there for me. And this is the brokerage that was trying to develop that better process. So yeah, I don't really have an elevator pitch. I haven't had to have one. I've been spoiled since I've been here because it sells itself. I don't have to sell what could happen if you build a revenue stream, which by the way, Ray, we are a downline model. We absolutely have revenue share. We absolutely have stock opportunities, but I don't have to sell that stuff. I get to offer solutions to help people elevate their game. I get to help solutions to keep money from flying out of their pocket. Everybody in this business often shops on split. How much money goes in my pocket? But the conversation on how a brokerage can stop the money from coming out of our pocket seems to be missed because that's just business as usual. That's the way it's always been. So many of the things that we do or this brokerage does is really kind of trailblazer. It's not that we're creating things that every agent's not already using. It's that their agents don't have to pay for them anymore, right? We literally can help agents save money. They don't have to pay for transaction coordinators. They don't have to pay for listing photography. You want a billboard? We got that covered. You want free leads? We got that covered. It's all the things that we're spending our money on day in and day out, but we don't have to. And it was crazy. I mean, I guess there was my elevator pitch. Hopefully it was like a 20-store floor building or whatever, but that's it. I mean, it's just a different mindset, man. It's a business partnership rather than a revenue stream.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Debbie, I'm going to do a check-in with you on time and where we're at and where we want to go next based upon time.
Well, we have 19 minutes left, so I would like to get at least one breakout room in. So, Ray, are we gonna let the cat out of the bag or what?
Yeah, let's do it. Are you guys ready for a big truth bomb from us here that's happening? Debbie and I have been building a whole bunch of things for the last couple of years, right? Between Facebook groups, meetup groups, resources for everybody. When we were introduced to EPIQUE, it blew our mind with what we have and the ability to share and how we could actually impact agents. What blew our mind more was when I met Charles. Not only is his girlfriend my personal coach for the last 3 years, that we had no idea about that. It was the values of alignment of what we're actually trying to do. Like, we're not just trying to coach agents. We're not just trying to create networking events. We're trying to make a massive impact. So Debbie and I decided that we would jump into EPIQUE because we want to focus on something that's agent centric and deliver unbelievable value, and not only put dollars back in agents' pocket, but really help people take something to the next level, right? Like, if I could have been in the first 1,000 at EXP 10 years ago, what would my life look like today? Now is that opportunity again, right? Disruption comes along in cycles, just like the housing, right? The market that we live in, it's the same thing. I've been fortunate enough to own disruptive companies and be ahead of the curve, and then wait and wait and wait, and then it pops with LED technology, with consumer electronics, with construction products. And that's what I see here today, is something that is completely different, totally sustainable, but in a different model, right? Just like Costco, just like Walmart. Those were very disruptive models that people did not believe in until they believed them, when they're billions and billions and billions of dollars. And that's what I see here. It's super interesting, guys. So there's no pressure. There's no sales tactic. We just want to share. Like, that is our job. That's what we feel our job is to share. Debbie, did I miss anything?
No, I think you did a great job, Ray.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, Charles,
Yes, sir.
before we jump into breakout rooms, what is the one thing that everybody should know about choosing brokerages based upon where you've come from and where you've been?
I would say the biggest thing, and like I said, there's great models. There's great models everywhere, right? But I think the biggest thing is when we're shopping for where we're going to land is, I hate to say this, but I think too many times brokerages of all sizes, shapes, and where whatever, they often tend to pitch their number one resource as education. And I'm going to tell you guys, I've been at them. I've recruited against all of them. There's very little differentiation in education amongst brands. Everybody's packaging up their own way. Education, I don't think, is the industry's highest and best value anymore, because it's readily available for everywhere for free. So I think when shopping for a brokerage, what we all really need to look at is not only what goes in our pocket, but how does a brokerage keep money from coming out of our pocket, right? Because at the end of the day, nobody pays their bills on gross, right? We all have to work about net. And so that's one of the biggest things I've taken away through the years on my journey, is constantly seeking ways to improve the cash flow and improve the bottom line. So, we often shop, and I've seen it, I've done it, right? What's the split? What's the cap, right? That's a fraction of the equation. Anytime I would be talking with any brokerage, whoever it is, I would be also equally concerned with how they can help the money from flying out of your pocket, because that is a huge expense in this industry. Huge expense. I mean, TCs are $400 or $500 a pop. Photos are $300 a pop. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Whoever, wherever you are, it doesn't have to be with us. Ask a complete question. Not only how can you help me money go in my pocket, but how can you stop money from coming out of my pocket? That's how I would shop these days.
I love it. Charles, thanks for this, man. This has been awesome. Thank you for
Pleasure.
sharing.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. All right, Debbie, let's break out.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording here.